Well, good morning, everyone. David DaCosta, Harcourt's Prime Properties, and today I have the distinct pleasure of having Mr. Jason Scott, Regional Director, all the way from Australia of Harcourt's Auctions USA. Good morning, Jason. I really
Morning.
appreciate you being here.
No problem. I appreciate you having me along and the invitation. Excited to be here and share some information.
Good. Well, as you know, we've worked together for 6 months under the auction banner, and
Yep.
I love it, love it, love it. And I arranged this video mainly to let the viewing audience know a little bit more about this. I know the process. My last 3 listings have all been auctioned and they've gone swimmingly well, all closed, everybody happy. But tell us a little bit about the auction process. I mean, probably the biggest question I get is, oh, it's distressed property. My property isn't in default type of thing.
Yeah, of course. And I can appreciate that. And I can appreciate that kind of response or reaction from a seller as well. Our auction platform is simply another avenue which we can offer our sellers in a process to get the outcome in selling their property. Typically, it's quite a streamlined, quick, smooth and fast process in order to decipher very, very easily and very quickly what the market value is for the home and determine the very best offer from the very best buyer. Now, none of our auctions, David, as you well know, are distressed properties. We deal exclusively in equity sales, so there are no foreclosures, no bank-owned, REO, short sale properties whatsoever.
So we don't have to appear on the court steps. And
Nothing
wave a
like that.
paddle.
No.
Okay, good.
We deal.
You hear that, folks?
With mums and dads
Okay.
selling their biggest asset, and as I say, it's just another avenue for them to potentially decide upon in order to gain the outcome for them based on their situation.
Perfect. So, non-distressed. I've been involved in them. I know it's not for the faint of heart from a realtor standpoint, but it's fun. It's good, and it's pretty seamless. Everything is out in the open, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
Transparent?
absolutely. The auction process, as run by Harcourts, is a very, very proactive approach to selling real estate. When we talk about traditional, quite often times it could be seen as a reactive process. What I mean by that is that we have a list price which we use to market the home, and then people will respond to us based on that list price, and they will call us, they will show the property, all of those types of things. Auction is a little bit more proactive in all of the information that is gathered beforehand, how we run the process, and outsourcing and outgoing and outbound contact points in order to generate more interest to help with the leverage at the end of the day, which of course will benefit the outcome as well. With the interest that comes through an auction process and then the in-turn leverage, that helps us get a higher price, it helps us get a cleaner offer, and it all helps us do that in a much, much shorter period of time when we compare that to the reactive approach of traditional real estate.
Got it. Okay. So it's a process, correct? And I would imagine, again, experience tells me this, but for the benefit of the audience out there, I imagine you get a lot of lowball, crazy offers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a word which provokes the market. Auction, what does that
Deal,
mean?
right?
Exactly right. And so, oftentimes there are those investors or those that do want to see if they can snatch a deal. But again, firstly, we're not fearful of that. I mean, I've got every confidence, David, in your negotiation skills in order to get the very best offer out of somebody. But in addition to that, it will all help with the leverage that is created, because the market at the end of the day will determine itself. When you have any product, the market will let you know what it's willing to bear. This is a process in order to help generate more interest and really combine that with this fear of loss being the auction date itself and that call to action from the market in order for decisions to be made quite quickly. And most of our sales actually happen before the actual scheduled auction date itself, with the remainder taking place on the day. So that then helps us paint a very clear picture for our seller as to when the property is likely to sell, who it's likely to be, and with all of that information being there up front, making it very, very easy for the decision that the seller is going to have to make. Because of course, this is a very big decision that a seller does make in their time here on this beautiful planet. So we want to make sure that they have all of the information so that they can rest very, very easily and sleep soundly that night, knowing that they've made the best decision and the most comfortable one for them.
Great. So somewhere during the process, they're going to get offers, the sellers are going to get offers in, and they can basically refuse the offer if it's not within their guidelines or their
Absolutely. So
price point.
this process, the seller has a non-disclosed reserve price at all times. And so the sale is subject not only to the reserve price, but also the seller's approval. So they're in complete control throughout the entirety of the process. Now, we can still receive and field to the seller traditional offers with contingencies and so on and so forth, as you would do ordinarily with a traditional transaction. And we also have some cleaner offers with the removal of some contingencies, or potentially all cash as well. But at the end of the day, our job, as I say, is to help provide the very best offer from the buyer, and the seller is then able to make the best decision from then, based on the interest that's there as to whether they would prefer to sell early, or they would prefer to hold out that interest through to auction day to allow them to competitively bid for the property and then make the decision from there.
Got you. So let's say auction day rolls around. It's tonight, let's say, and they haven't got the offer of their dreams. So people show up, they bid. I know there's a registration process and they're all ready to go. So qualified bidders only show up. They've been cross-qualified financially.
Yep.
$1 million property as an example. So they bid $900,000 and that's the best. They take it or leave it, correct?
Yeah, the seller, as I say, has a few options that are available to them. Again, being in the pilot seat, being in control throughout the process. Now, first and foremost, they know, as you mentioned, that these buyers have jumped through a few hoops, not very many, and very easy ones to jump through. But again, helping us to determine rather if they're the right buyer or not. So, as you say, if there's a financial institution involved, we do require a proof of a cross qualification, I should say, and a proof of funds if it is an all cash purchase. We require an earnest money deposit as well, and of course the registration process from there. But the seller then is able to see what the market will bear for the property. Now let's say that there's 5 bidders on a property, and they bid and they bid and they bid, and it eventually stops, and we might go back and negotiate a little bit more, and that's the best offer that they've received up to this point. That will be the seller's decision as to whether they would like to stay in the property or whether they would like to sell the property, knowing very, very clearly what the market has decided to suggest the property's value is. Now, if they decide not to sell for whatever reason, there are again some more options there. We can continue the momentum that the auction process has provided and go to the next auction event if that's something that they would like to pursue. We can judge the market based on what it has told us today to then list the property at a price based on that market value that has been very clearly shown to us. And then they can make a decision from there based on the offers that come forward. Or, of course, that can help them determine that it's not the right time for them and they may like to retain the home. So there's plenty of avenues that they can then choose. And again, it's up to them as to which way they would like to pursue. This is a process in order to generate an outcome. Sometimes that outcome is a sale well above reserve price. Sometimes the outcome is a sale at reserve price. Sometimes that outcome is just helping the seller determine perhaps this isn't the right move
market
for them.
price is. Got it. So it's a win-win for the seller. I'm a buyer now, so let me put on my buyer's hat. What's in it for me? How do I benefit from buying at auction?
Well, buying at auction is a very, very transparent process. So the seller actually has to do quite a few things prior to starting the campaign of an auction property. So we require that the sellers sign their seller disclosures. The sellers do a natural hazard inspection report as well, a termite inspection and a home inspection, in addition to title and so on and so forth. We get HOA docs as well, if it is a HOA type property.
Hiding out in the open.
Absolutely. So all of that information is there. So we essentially provide a health check on the home and on the product that we're selling. So a buyer can read through that, take confidence and some comfort out of that information so that they know that this home they have fallen emotionally in love with is the right home, and they can then make some determinations on the price that they would like to offer or the price that they would go to prior to the auction perhaps to secure the home. It also discloses information out there as far as some issues that may be with the property or some repairs that may need to take place. And so then we can negotiate with the buyer based on that information, on the seller getting that fixed up, on the buyer taking ownership of that upon closing, all of those types of things. Okay. So we provide all of that information. Now typically that is done in a traditional transaction during the escrow time frame. So that again helps us provide confidence to the buyer and the seller that the escrow is going to be quite a smooth process. Typically our escrows are a little bit quicker as well through to closing, depending on the situation between buyer and seller and their personal timeline, if you like. But again, we provide the information, making it very, very clear. Also, of course, they're very, very well aware of the other interests that's there in the home. with auction day itself, with the bidding that takes place, they can see the social proof of somebody else that places an offer, and that helps them make the decision potentially about whether
Where to
they
go.
would like to bid more, because there is justification of the property's value with somebody else offering.
And they're
it.
not bidding blind. They know
Absolutely.
exactly. Good. Well, Jason, thanks a lot. You've cleared up a lot of misconceptions or whatever for our audience, and I want to thank you so much for being here today,
Pleasure.
and continued success. My deal is that I'm going to be doing more of these, an educational series, if you will, on video. So catch us here, David DaCosta, DaCosta Properties, Harcourt's Prime Properties, right here in Carlsbad. And I think that's a wrap. Thanks again.
Thanks, David. Always a
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
All right.